Hi guys. Today I'm going to read a story called Teammates. And this is one of my favorite stories. This is written by Peter Golenbock and it's illustrated by Paul Bacon. And this type of book is called historical fiction. Historical fiction is when a writer takes something that happened and kind of tells it like a story. And this is the story of Jackie Robinson, who is a famous baseball player, and his teammate Pee Wee Reese. I hope you enjoy it. And you can see here is the real Jackie Robinson, and here is the real Pee Wee Reese. They played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And that's Ebbets Field, which is where the Brooklyn Dodgers played, but that's not a team anymore. They're the LA Dodgers. Once upon a time in America, when automobiles were black and looked like tanks, and laundry was white and hung on clotheslines to dry, there were two wonderful baseball leagues that no longer exist. They were called the Negro League. So we've talked about this before that in this country, there was segregation and black people and white people had to do things separately in certain places. And so African American people couldn't play baseball in the Major League Baseball teams. They had their own leagues, two of them. The Negro Leagues had extraordinary players and adoring fans came to see them wherever they played. They were heroes, but players in the Negro Leagues didn't make much money and their lives on the road were hard. In the next page, it'll tell you a little bit more about why their lives were so hard. Laws against segregation didn't exist in the 1940s. In many places in this country, Black people were not allowed to go to the same schools and churches as white people. They couldn't sit in the front of a bus or a trolley car. They couldn't drink from the same drinking fountains that white people drank from. Back then, many hotels didn't rent rooms to Black people, so the Negro League players slept in their cars. Many towns had no restaurants that would serve them, so they often had to eat meals that they could buy and carry with them. So that really explains why their lives were so hard, because they couldn't sleep in hotels, they couldn't go into restaurants. It was very terribly unfair. Life was very different for the players in the major leagues. They were the leagues for white players. Compared to the Negro League players, white players were very well paid. They stayed in good hotels and ate in fine restaurants. Their pictures were put on baseball cards, and the best players became famous all over the world. And here are some famous players from that time. That's Joe DiMaggio, Ty Cobb, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, and Ted Williams. Many Americans knew that racial prejudice, that means separating people or disliking people because of the color of their skin, was wrong, but few dared to challenge openly the way things were. And many people were apathetic about racial problems. Apathetic means they just didn't care. If it didn't affect them, they didn't care. Some feared that it could be dangerous to object. Vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan reacted violently against those who tried to change the way Blacks were treated. The general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, here he is, he was a real person, his name was Branch Rickey. The general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team was a man by the name of Branch Rickey. He was not afraid of change. He wanted to treat the Dodger fans to the best players he could find, regardless of the color of their skin. He thought segregation was unfair and wanted to give everyone, regardless of race or creed, an opportunity to compete equally on ball fields across America. To do this, the Dodgers needed one special man. Branch Rickey launched a search for him. He was looking for a star player in the Negro Leagues who would be able to compete successfully despite threats on his life or attempts to injure him. He would have to possess the self-control not to fight back when opposing players tried to intimidate or hurt him. If this man disgraced himself on the field, Rickey knew his opponents would use it as an excuse to keep Blacks out of the major leagues for many more years. Rickey thought Jackie Robinson might just be the man. So here's a real photo of Jackie Robinson, and here are some illustrations of him. And when Branch Rickey chose Jackie Robinson, he really had to think carefully because, as the book says, Branch Rickey knew that people were going to treat Jackie Robinson terribly. And he had to have confidence that the player he picked to join the major leagues was going to be able to take that with grace and patience. And there they are meeting. Jackie rode the train to Brooklyn to meet Mr. Rickey. When Mr. Rickey told him, "I want a man with the courage not to fight back," Jackie Robinson replied, "If you take this gamble, I will do my best to perform." They shook hands. Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson were starting in on what would be known in history as the Great Experiment. And that's a picture of Robinson's jersey. He was number 42 on the Brooklyn Dodgers. At spring training with the Dodgers, Jackie was mobbed by blacks, young and old, as if he were a savior. He was the first black person to try out for a major league team. If he succeeded, they knew others would follow. So African Americans were very excited because Jackie Robinson was opening up opportunities for them, and this was exciting for everyone. Initially, life with the Dodgers was for Jackie a series of humiliations. The players on his team who came from the South, men who had been taught to avoid black people since childhood, moved to another table whenever he sat down next to them. Many opposing players were cruel to him, calling him nasty names from their dugouts. A few tried to hurt him with their spiked shoes. Pitchers aimed at his head, and he received threats on his life from both individuals and from organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. This is a lonely picture, and I imagine that that's how Jackie Robinson felt. People threatened his life, his teammates were unkind to him, opposing teams tried to injure him. Despite all the difficulties, Jackie Robinson didn't give up. He made the Brooklyn Dodgers team. And here's a team photo, and if you look, you can see Jackie Robinson down there in the front looking very uncomfortable. You know, his body language shows that he's all tight and pulled together. He doesn't look comfortable. But making the Dodgers was only the beginning. Jackie had to face abuse and hostility throughout the season, from April through September. His worst pain was inside. Often he felt very alone. On the road, he had to live by himself because only the white players were allowed in hotels in towns where the team played. He must feel very isolated. The whole time, Pee Wee Reese, the Dodger shortstop, was growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. He had rarely even seen a black person, unless it was in the back of a bus. Most of his friends and relatives hated the idea of him playing on the same field as a black man. In addition, Pee Wee Reese had more to lose than other players when Jackie joined the team. Jackie had been a shortstop, and everyone thought Jackie would take Pee Wee's job. Lesser men might have felt angry toward Jackie, but Pee Wee was different. He told himself, if he's good enough to take my job, he deserves it. So Pee Wee Reese grew up in Kentucky, which was a segregated state, and he didn't have a lot of experience with black people. And it sounds like he had a lot of racist relatives, but let's see what happens with Pee Wee. When his Southern teammates circulated a petition to throw Jackie off the team and asked him to sign it, Pee Wee responded, "I don't care if the man is black, blue, or striped," and refused to sign. "He can play and he can help us win," he told others. That's what counts. This is Crosley Field, and this is showing where Pee Wee Reese grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, not too far away, is where Crosley Field is. Very early in the season, the Dodgers traveled west to Ohio to play the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati is near Pee Wee's hometown of Louisville. The Reds played in a small ballpark where the fans sat close to the field. The players could almost feel the breath of the fans on the backs of their necks. Many who came that day screamed terrible, hateful things at Jackie when the Dodgers were on the field. More than anything else, Pee Wee Reese believed in doing what was right. When he heard the fans yelling at Jackie, Pee Wee decided to take a stand. Now remember, these people are yelling awful, mean, and racist things at Jackie Robinson. With his head high, Pee Wee walked directly from his shortstop position to where Jackie was playing first base. The taunts and shouting of the fans were ringing in Pee Wee's ears. It saddened him because he knew it could have been his friends and neighbors. Pee Wee's legs felt heavy, but he knew what he had to do. As he walked toward Jackie wearing the gray Dodger uniform, he looked into his teammate's bold, pained eyes. The first baseman had done nothing to provoke the hostility except for that he sought to be treated as an equal. Jackie was grim with anger. Pee Wee smiled broadly as he reached Jackie. Jackie smiled back. Stopping beside Jackie, Pee Wee put his arm around Jackie's shoulder. An audible gasp rose from the crowd when they saw what Pee Wee had done. Then there was silence. Outlined on a sea of green grass stood these two great athletes, one black, one white, both wearing the same team uniform. Oh, I always cry at this part, sorry. I am standing by him, Pee Wee Reese said to the world. This man is my teammate. So I love this book because I think it's a great example of how an act of kindness can also be an act of bravery, because Pee Wee's kindness at the end was really brave because he knew that people would hate him as well. I hope you enjoyed that story. Sorry, I got all teary about it.